The saying goes that time is fleeting, precious moments cherished once they have long passed. It was just another day for a teenage boy as he partakes in the kingdom's festivities. But the whims of fate had greater plans as he embarks on a journey all across time. Together with his companions, these band of heroes traverse the past, present, future, and the end of time to save the world from destruction. Experience a classic tale of heartfelt friendship, parenthood, courage, redemption, hope, and faith in humanity. Welcome to Chrono Trigger. With over 30 years living, finally I managed to play one of the most iconic and highly revered games in the JRPG genre. For too long, I have kept Chrono Trigger in my backlog, and after completing my first playthrough, I am glad to say that it is truly a one-of-a-kind experience. These type of games are simply far too few in the current gaming landscape, and I am glad that I went out of my way to play this all-time favorite. So without further ado, let's talk about why every gamer should play Chrono Trigger at least once in their lifetime. One of the prominent features that will be instantly recognizable in Chrono Trigger is the visual art style of the late Akira Toriyama, that is clearly inspired by his work of the long-running Dragon Ball series. Despite the game's age, the pixelated art style remains charming and has aged like fine wine at a time where photorealistic graphics have become far too much the norm. Chrono Trigger is reminiscent of the times where games were born out of passion, and it clearly manifests in the attention to detail of the various level designs in the game. Whether it is venturing into lush forests, desolate shelters, snowy mountains, magical kingdoms, and many more. It is truly remarkable that a game released in 1995 remains visually impressive without resorting to high graphical fidelity to execute. The beauty of Chrono Trigger's pixel art style and level design is not just pleasing for the eyes or a walk down memory lane, but it also manages to hit the sweet spot of being just right in scope. Throughout my experience, the content never felt too barren nor overwhelming, unlike many modern games to date. It is quite rare to see a game taking full advantage of its central theme of traveling through time and presenting truly diverse visual spectacles. With the premise of time travel, Chrono Trigger is easily able to immerse players by providing realistic perspectives of life during their respective periods. For example, traveling to the very past will bring players back to when dinosaurs existed and humans dressed, communicated, and expressed themselves in a very primitive manner. While traversing far into the future will lead you to meet fully functional, self-aware robots with unfathomable technology. Yes, it is easy to say how stereotypical these examples are in today's standards, but remember that we are talking about a game that was released in 1995, and at this point, we received something innovative and what makes video games truly special. With a strong and varied visual appeal of Chrono Trigger's graphics comes with a very relatable premise. While the game does not lean on heavy philosophical values, it does succeed in narrating the story it wishes to tell in flying colors. Sometimes the plot of JRPGs do not have to be extensively thought-provoking. A straightforward tale of stopping an evil entity from destroying the world is all that we really need. What makes Chrono Trigger shine in the context of his story is its phenomenal execution. In today's standards of time-traveling plots, while simple at face value, can very easily be poorly written. But Chrono Trigger is definitely an exemption. The reason is quite simple, because the game from the ground up is all-encompassing. Meticulous consideration was taken to ensure that all aspects of the game, namely the story, visuals, audio, and gameplay, consistently blend together. Let me begin with the story. With the premise of time travel comes infinite scope and creativity in the writing. The immersion of Chrono Trigger's plot excels with the extensive attention to detail placed not just in the main story, but also with its cast of characters. At face value, the party you will meet seems to be nothing out of the ordinary in the beginning, but I was quite amused with how much depth their story arcs were as I progressed in the game. Just a caveat for those looking to play the game and wish to prevent spoilers. I will be sharing some major plot details throughout the video to emphasize my point. If you have still not played this game and wish to avoid spoilers, then this is your chance to turn back and hopefully return to this video. Again, spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. To further illustrate, one of the most iconic characters in your party for me personally is Frog, a mysterious hermit warrior who maintains poise and elegance in both diplomacy and battle, only for players to discover in a flashback where Frog is actually a human but was inflicted with a curse by a mage as a symbol for lacking the strength and courage to save his friend. Thus begins his hero's journey upon joining your team, which again makes him one of the most compelling and relatable characters in the game. The way Frog's story arc was told was in itself already impressive, especially a game that is 3 decades old. However, I was blown away by a supposed major antagonist in the story that had much more nuance than I anticipated. Returning to Frog's story, the villain who was responsible for his transformation is the mage that was wreaking havoc in the land, Magus. As you progress in the main plot, you'll eventually make your way to Magus's innermost chamber and defeat him. While that might sound like nothing out of the ordinary, I was not expecting how much depth this plotline has, and the game even provides player choice on how it all unfolds. Later on in the game, you will have the chance to add, optional I may add, to find Magus to either 1, kill him once and for all the atrocities he has committed, or 2, recruit him to the party to fight your true enemy. Should you choose the latter, you will eventually piece together that Magus had been a victim in the story. You discover that as a child, Magus was transported to Frog's timeline and was stuck all alone for the remainder of his childhood days, inevitably resulting in his transition to become the spiteful mage and resorting to whatever means necessary to fight against the entity that destroyed his life. It is mind-blowing that a game released long ago can have this much depth, choice, and nuance to the storytelling that most games do not even come close to competing today. It is very rare for modern JRPGs to have this much choice that can truly change the outcome of the story. I truly hope that Square Enix returns to making these types of games. No need for state-of-the-art visual fidelity, just beautiful art style alongside an amazing soundtrack. Speaking of soundtrack, the immersive storytelling of Chrono Trigger is pushed even further by its fantastic audio. Yes, this is an old-school RPG where voice acting in video games is not yet prominent, but the sound effects and music more than make up for it. Don't take my word for it. I will let the game speak for itself. Whether you're out exploring the world or engaging foes in combat, the sound effects for Chrono Trigger add further immersion to the gameplay experience, as it can sound immensely satisfying. But the greater highlight in Chrono Trigger's audio design is without a doubt the soundtrack. Again, whether your adventures lead you through the various towns, dungeons, timelines, or fighting the many enemies that you will encounter in the game, the soundtrack is iconic and will leave its mark for years or even decades to come. I have talked about the visuals, story, and audio design. And like I always say in my videos, comes the most crucial component of any video game, and that is the gameplay. Because Chrono Trigger is at its heart a game. And obviously, given the title of this video, it is very good. The gameplay of Chrono Trigger is so great that I was at times baffled why some of its mechanics never made its way to the present. Or maybe I am just not aware of other games that try to do so. If there are other games out there, do let me know in the comments. Now let's begin with interaction and exploration. Chrono Trigger in the context of length can be very short or very long, especially in JRPG standards. The beauty of it is that players are given the choice on the length of their experience. Given the plot centers around time, provided you are strong enough, especially on New Game Plus, players have the option to simply confront the final boss in the game and end the story as early as literally the beginning, which I find incredibly bold and creative because how many games nowadays do you know provide this much freedom to its players? I can't name any at the top of my head, but again, this is another feature of Chrono Trigger that I hope makes a comeback someday. Another feature that I appreciate is the multiple endings that increase the replay value. Each of the distinct endings can be unlocked provided you meet certain criteria, and if you are concerned that it will take hundreds of hours to unlock all of them, fear not, as I mentioned earlier, Chrono Trigger features New Game Plus that will expedite the process significantly and is even mandatory for most cases. As you explore the world of Chrono Trigger, the game begins at a very linear path for players to become accustomed to the game world, characters, and gameplay mechanics. Once you reach around the midpoint to the late game, where you have access to travel across the timelines, the game opens up massively. So huge are the exploration options that I was not prepared for how much Chrono Trigger is teeming with secrets and hidden collectibles, complemented with a well-told story for each of them. To put it simply, Chrono Trigger is rich with engaging content just waiting to be found. Unlike most JRPGs, in order to take down the strongest bosses in Chrono Trigger, not only will you need to grind levels, but more importantly, you will need to retrieve the best gear that cannot simply be purchased. You will need to explore extensively or do your research to retrieve these powerful equipment. And again, unlike most JRPGs nowadays, these items even have backstories that are very well written. Some of them are even tied to the story arcs of the characters in your party, which is an excellent touch. And I really don't understand why developers and writers can't simply follow this template in designing their games, as I sincerely believe that this method will never overstay its welcome. One example is obtaining Frog's strongest weapon, the upgraded Masamune. In order to retrieve this powerful blade, you will have to travel between two timelines so that the events of the past can reflect into the future to remove the obstacles to make your way to the deepest part of the dungeon. And as a reward on top of the enhanced weapon, you are also given a satisfying conclusion to Frog's story, which I will leave for you to experience, or is a good throwback to those who have already done so. Another example is the retrieval of the Rainbow Shell, which will yield rainbow weapons and armor for your party that are one of the strongest equipment in the game. For these weapons, Marley's story comes into play, where you will need the kingdom's assistance to retrieve the Rainbow Shell. In summary, the subplot of Marley's story is the political intrigue that she has to deal with in the kingdom as its princess and reconciling with her father. I really cannot overstate how effective it is to integrate a character's story into retrieving one of the strongest arsenal in the game. It makes retrieving these powerful items fulfilling both in gameplay and storytelling. Two birds in one stone. In summary, you will not be disappointed with the enormous amounts of engaging content in Chrono Trigger. It is not simply artificially inflated to pad out the game length, but very compelling and well written. For a game that was released in 1995, I can see why it is revered as one of the greatest games of all time. I just find it both great and sad at the same time. Great because I got to experience this classic adventure, but sad because I am skeptical if we will ever get a game of this caliber again in my lifetime. Perhaps I can always hold on to hope. But enough of the doom and gloom, because we still have one more component to talk about, and that is the combat. Like I said earlier, I am left wondering why some of the combat mechanics in Chrono Trigger never made it to the present day. I am aware that it is an active turn-based combat system, and that many JRPGs in the genre are releasing in the market. But I wish some of the mechanics in Chrono Trigger still remain today. While Chrono Trigger is an active turn-based combat game, it has distinct features that stand out from the rest of the crowded genre. My favorite in particular is you have full control of the timing and turn management of your party. You're probably asking, Gray, what do you mean? Don't you get to control your entire party in turn-based JRPGs? And my answer to that is both yes and no. The unique feature of Chrono Trigger's combat is that you're able to not only control your entire party, but also the timing of their actions. For example, if both Chrono and Marley's turns are ready, for most other games, you will have to utilize the turn of who came first before being able to execute the turn of the next character. That is not the case for Chrono Trigger, as you can easily prioritize whose turn you would like to use, which opens the door to a wider range of tactics and strategies players can create to take advantage of enemy weaknesses and secure victory. In some instances, you're even encouraged to take note of the battle terrain and positioning of your opponents. If you are crafty enough, you can use particular abilities that have an area of effect damage if enemies are close enough with each other, optimizing the full capabilities of your abilities and managing your mana pool. Boss fights are extremely high adrenaline and require players to be strategic and identify the best tactics and weaknesses of the boss to secure victory. I like the fact that the pacing of the combat progression in Chrono Trigger is very well balanced in a sense that, for the most part, you cannot depend on performing the same tactics, such as relying on only one character in your party to carry you through. Solely using Chrono to deal damage, it may work for some bosses, but he can get easily demolished by magic-based bosses if it does not receive any support from the rest of the party. Spamming the attack button hoping to quickly overwhelm the boss? Well, guess what? That boss may have a massive counterattack that can annihilate your party when activated 2 to 3 times. Suffice to say, Chrono Trigger should be played strategically and is never reliant on excessive grinding or abusing your strongest attacks. The roster of abilities you can utilize is further extended with the double tech and triple tech mechanics, whereas their names imply, double tech are abilities where 2 members in your party perform an ability together should they both be present in battle, while triple techs are abilities performed by the entire party. Both double tech and triple tech consume MP for all members involved in their use. These abilities are obtained through gaining TP and by using the party members involved in multiple battles until they are unlocked, encouraging players to mix and match between party members to find the best abilities that suit their playstyle. One of my favorites in my first run is the double tech of Chrono and Ayla, Falcon Strike, where I was easily able to destroy the final boss because of its horizontal positioning of all its parts, which was perfect for the ability as the battle required you to quickly take down the other parts to have room to deal damage to the main body to win the battle. And I am sure there are many more abilities that I have yet to utilize and discover. With that said, Chrono Trigger's combat holds so much depth, strategy, and player choice that not many JRPGs, even to this day, are as extensive. And these are the many reasons why Chrono Trigger is one of the greatest games of all time. The beautiful pixelated art style remain gorgeous, and the character designs of Akira Toriyama shall forever remain a classic. The story is phenomenally executed, with relatable cast of characters, cleverly written character development, and multiple endings that greatly increase the replay value. The sound effects are spot on, the soundtracks are well composed, raising the immersion exponentially. The exploration gameplay is rich with hidden secrets that have well-written backstories that never feel artificial to increase the game length. The combat requires you to be strategic with a wide range of abilities, encouraging players to discover new techniques and tactics to achieve victory. Chrono Trigger is a triumph in gaming and very much deserves its place as one of the most iconic games that defined the JRPG genre. And I am glad that I found my way into playing this phenomenal experience. I hope that Square Enix stays true to its new strategy of developing quality over quantity of games that focus on gameplay substance over visual fidelity. And that concludes this video. Thank you for watching, and do consider subscribing if you have not already. I hope to see you in my next video on Metaphor ReFantasio. Happy JRPG gaming, and I will see you next time.